I left home to go to university in Eric in 1964. Anyway, but up until that time, and Doug Richards and John Wasson, John was a little older than us, than Doug and I, but Doug and I are the same age. We were born in 46. And I thought, as a kid, I thought I died and gone to heaven when living up there, you know. But especially with Doug and John as our friends, I can remember so many stories of my years up Jameson Road as a high school kid. Because I was either on that horse and down and across the Ghost River and over at Johnny Wasson's, or I was over at Doug's. Doug's, they lived, the Richards live about 4 or 5 kilometers straight west. And we'd go over and go through Dawson's. Well, do you remember Dawson's?
Rule and Frankie Dawson.
Rule and Frankie. And Donnie, their the oldest son. Yeah. And then they had Francis, I think was
Fern.
Yeah. Fern was their daughter. Yeah. And so I'd go over and I'd pick up Donnie Dawson on his horse, and we'd go over to Doug's, and John would come, and I can remember we'd spend the whole night at Richards playing poker, you know, sitting there and all night long. And before it got light in the morning, Donnie and I and Johnny would all go get on our horses and come back, and Donnie'd drop off at their place, and then I'd come and down there on the we called it the flat, you know, the big. Mm-hmm. If you go just across the Ghost River at Wasson's there and up, there's that long flat. It was all part of the Bar C in those days, and it probably still is. And John would continue on down the flat and down across to his place, and I'd go up to Jameson Road to home, and that went on all the time. And then it got to the fall, and would be hunting trips. Mm-hmm. You know, in the summer we'd be playing cards all until night, and hunting trips. And some of our best times, we would Eddie Pears, mm-hmm. who lived right over here. Mm-hmm. Well, I can almost see his yard from here. Eddie Pears would he had an old Ford tractor with a little trailer behind it, and he'd haul the week before we were going to go hunting. He'd haul square bales all the way up and up to the Dry Fork of the Ghost. There was an old log cabin up there that Dougie knew about, and that was our base camp for hunting. And he'd haul square bales up there, and then when it got to the weekend or a school holiday, although sometimes it didn't even have to be a school holiday, we were just going hunting. Mm-hmm. I can always remember Jack McDonnell, who was principal of the school at the time. I'd be gone for 2 or 3 days, and I'd show up back at school, and I'd go into his office to write out the absentee slip, and he'd just write down hunting. Yeah. But then he'd haul us hay up there, and then the 4 of us would, I'd get on my horse again, old Topsy, and John had come up, and we'd go over to Doug's, and he had a pack horse called Problem, an old white mare, and we'd load her all up with our gear, and we'd go west, and you know where the river forks there, go up the Dry Fork of the Ghost to this cabin.
I think they called it the Hussy Cabin, didn't they?
Yeah, that's it, the Hussy Cabin. Yeah. And for our hunt trips, and we'd hobble the horses at night and just throw out some hay. They'd never go anywhere, you know. They'd be and we'd hunt all day, moose and elk and whitetail, but mostly moose. And we'd hunt all through there, up around the Broken Leg Lake, you know, and some of the stories and antics about those hunting trips. As a kid, I still remember. We used to tease John Wasson incessantly, all the time. We're going hunting, we're going into the bush. And we'd get up there and at nighttime, we'd be rolling out our sleeping bags, and we just slept on the floor in that old cabin. And John he'd be laying out his stuff, and he'd have a cot.
Yeah.
and a pillow. And he brought, one time we got up in the morning, we woke up, it was dark, pitch dark, we're going to get an early start hunting, and here's John, and a little mirror, and he's combing his hair, and he had Brill cream. I don't know if you ever heard of Brill cream. In those days, we used to put Brill cream in our hair, and he's putting Brill cream in his hair and combing his hair, and Dougie and I are laughing, and Eddie just shaking our heads at John. Yeah, we're going out for the day hunting, and he's putting Brill cream in his hair. But anyway,
he may have been a little more particular about the cleanliness of the plates and the food and whatnot too than the rest.
A little more. Oh, I tell you, so Eddie was the cook, and he did most of the cooking. And it was again, it was like a kid my age, high school kid. It was like, and I'm really enjoying this, Eric, because I'm sitting here looking out your living room window, and I'm looking right at the Dry Fork of the Ghost, End Mountain, and the east end of Lake Minnewaca, that's where we had so much, we had so much fun. Some of the stories. I can remember John one time. I always remember Jim Richards, Doug's dad, and my dad. Whatever you do, don't shoot. We had a 303. I had a 303 Lee Enfield. It was basically an old World War II Army rifle, 303. And don't ever shoot that rifle off the back of your horse. Make sure. Well, Joe, I remember one time we're in the alder bush on a slope there up on the east side of the mountain. And the alders, it's like so thick you couldn't even walk through it. And here's John, and I don't know, to this day I don't remember what he saw. I must have saw a moose or something. Anyway, he grabs his gun out of the rifle scabbard, and he took a shot off the back of his horse. And I remember him and he was laying out on his back in the alder bushes, and the horse is over there, we used to have just so much fun. Young kid, hunting in the bush with Dougie and some of the trips. And I remember Doug, with a glint in his eye, always tell me I had to lead the pack horse. Old Problem. I never. What, Doug? Why does your dad call this? Why is this pack horse named Problem? And Doug would say, you'll find out, I'm leading Problem. So here I am on my horse, and I got the lead rope and the Problem behind me, and that horse would never follow Topsy. It was always going. So, I was stopping every 2 minutes because he'd go to the other side of the tree, and I've got the arms stretched out. But we had a lot of fun hunting up the Dry Fork of the Ghost in the fall, and then you would remember this, Eric. Eddie Pears actually built a football field down right next to
Wassons.
Wassons is right there across the river, and there's a field just on the east side. And on weekends, a whole bunch of us would gather down there, and John was football crazy, the Calgary Stampeders and the football, and this is all in the 60s, and we'd get down there on Sunday afternoons, and we had goalposts and everything that he built down there, and we'd have football games. There were supposed to be flag football games, but they were, and we'd all gather. I still remember I'd get on Topsy, our old skid horse. She was a Morgan mare, tremendous horse. She skid logs all week, and then on the weekends I'd ride her all over the countryside. But I'd get on Topsy and we'd come down and I'd put her in the corrals there at Wasson's, and Doug would be there, and John and Eddie and a bunch of other Jameson Road kids, Bobby and Kenny, and we'd play football all Sunday afternoon down there. And it was there were some pretty intense intense games, because it's supposed to be flag football, but
Well, John was such a powerful guy. He wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't a big guy, but he was powerful.
yeah, really strong upper body. He could throw that ball. I can remember. He could throw it 50 yards, half the length of a football field. You know, he was really.
I remember Doug saying that the only time John ever lost a wrestling match was the odd time his sister beat him.
Yeah, and yeah, Ann was Ann could look after herself all right, and they had it might have been Eddie's dad that built it, but they had a just down right on the bed of the river, the Ghost River. They had I'd call it a dugout, but he'd gone down there with a cat.
Little swimming hole.
A swimming hole, and he built up a great big berm, a dam, and it filled with water. And we'd go down there swimming all the time. But it was, that's...
Ghost is cold.
The Ghost is cold. It was, but we, in the summer, we'd go down there and swim on that. And I can remember Ann... she could handle herself in that swimming hole. I'll tell you, with all this, but it was cold. It was, but that was sort of what you did in the summertime, And in the wintertime, we'd quite often throw the skates over the back of the saddle, and I'd head over in a hockey stick and I'd head over to Richards. They had a little lake there, just down from their place, from that old cabin. And Dougie'd, a lot of times he'd wait for a Chinook wind to blow the snow off, but most of the time he had to shovel it, make a hockey arena area or a hockey area, and we'd play shinny over there, and that was always a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of people, would say, well, those are just stories, but no, that's what you did.
But the key thing for me is people in those years didn't have a lot of money.
No.
But they enjoyed life.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and I don't ever remember money being a big concern. Like I can remember as a child, going down to the Hollywood Ranch store was a treat. And you'd go in and get a candy or something off the shelf, and coming back. I can remember you made your entertainment with your friends up there, and money never really ever entered into it.
No, didn't need it.
Didn't need it for anything, Like a lot of times I talked about the flat down on our north fence. Ends right at the flat, and then the Barcy land, when it was only about a half a mile from there down to the river, and there was that big flat down there, and we'd go down there and have horse races, and I mean, this sounds silly, but it actually happened.